Tomatillo salsa. This is what we're going to be canning today. Water bath canning, actually. It's a fairly simple process. The time that takes is just the prepping time. And that's where we're going to begin now. I'm going to be decoring all these little tomatillos and chopping them up, adding all my other stuff together, and I will take you along this process. With my little paring knife, I end up cutting out the center core, just like this. And the next step is, I'll be chopping these up, and I need 5.5 cups for this recipe. It actually is supposed to make about 3 pints. Let's see what it'll come out to be, because sometimes the recipes, you get more or you'll get less. We'll see what this comes out to. One thing I've learned about tomatillos, they do have this husk on them, and they can be quite sticky. The easiest way that I found to get them off of there is running them under cold water. You got to wash them anyways, and it seems to be easier to pull this husk off of it and then turn around and wash them. It keeps you from having very much sticky hands at the same time. When choosing vegetables of any kind that you are going to can, make sure that there are no blemishes. You want nice, clean vegetables. And the reason for that is to keep any damage within your products or any spoilage. So you just want nice, clean, ripe, not overripe, just the perfect vegetable to can with. These you have to be very particular with, and I don't know about many others, but if there are bad spots, I will definitely cut them away because I do not want them in my stored products. Y'all, I was actually quite amazed. These are homegrown, and the recipe calls for 5.5 cups, and it looks like I may be getting a second round of this. I'll find out later. I'm just doing this video right now on making your homemade tomatillo salsa, or as some call it, salsa verde. However, the chopping of these don't have to be very big, just not super small either. Just chop them up, and this required 5.5 cups. The next one I'm going to do is our homegrown jalapenos, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to use gloves. I'm not as brave as I used to be in times past. Don't ask me how I learned the hard way. So my next will be the jalapenos that go in here. The recipe says green peppers or green chili peppers. I'm using jalapenos. They're pretty much all the same thing. You talk a brief moment about jalapeno peppers and in your canning. This is basically in your canning, cooking, whatever. A lot of people think that it's the pepper that's actually spicy. It's really not. Now some of these I am going to clean just like this. I take out the ribbing center and I'll pull out the seeds. And some of them I'm going to leave just like this. The seeds and the ribbing is where your heat actually comes from. I don't want one so clean that I don't get the spice, but I don't want them all pretty much full spice, because some people may enjoy that. I don't particularly like super hot. I'm going to actually see if I can get what I can out of these peppers, because the recipe, which I will show you at the end of this, what canning book I used and where I found the recipe at. But the recipe calls for 1 cup of chopped 1 cup of chopped green chili peppers, and I again am using jalapenos. Lord have mercy, y'all. Those few peppers that I had, I kind of thought maybe I could get a cup out of them. Yeah, that didn't work, so I had to pause and run out to my garden and see if I can find any other peppers to add to this. And glory be, I actually found enough. So this is 1 cup of chopped jalapenos going in our mix with our tomatillos. Now, these will be cooked up, by the way. So it's going to be cooked down, it'll come to a boil, and then it'll simmer for 10 minutes. The next part of this recipe will be 1 cup chopped onions. And as I go along with all my ingredients, I will actually wash everything along the way. So, and yes, including my onions. Anything in the bad spot like this one here, I probably will not go down this way. So it actually calls for one good large onion, so I'll probably be using a couple of them for these. I just now seen that one, so I wouldn't use this part down here. How I actually remove that is I'll cut down, as you've seen, about halfway in my onion, and I just pulled that center core out, and I'm going to be tossing this because that's not something I'm going to use. But this good part right here, this is the parts I'm going to use. I don't want anything bad in my food. And now we have our 1 cup chopped onions. Throw that in the mix. Next will be 4 cloves of garlic. Okay, on our garlic it calls for 4 cloves. I'm not sure about anybody else, but I like nice sized cloves of garlic. So I could actually eat garlic and everything. But this is called for 4 cloves minced. And usually you can use a mincer. I've been doing this for so long. All I do is I take a flat end of my knife and it's hard to do one-handed, but I'll put my palm across the top, mash it down, and then I'll just sit and chop it up into a minced form. Okay, y'all, so the next recipe required some chopped cilantro. I told you I was going to do my lessons learned, and I would always be honest. At one point I learned about taking in my crops of cilantro. This was really sad. And freeze it. This is going to be totally up to you, but this is something I would never do again. It lost all of its flavor, absolutely all of it, and I feel like a huge waste right now. So I will probably be right back and go check my garden right quick if I have enough. If not, if the heat got it, I will probably omit the cilantro, and when I go to use it, I'll just add fresh cilantro to whatever my dish I'm going to use it for. But yeah, I would not suggest freezing it. You really will have no flavor left. Okay, so if you are following this recipe on the cilantro, if you do happen to have some fresh, unlike me, it calls for 2 tablespoons of minced cilantro. The next ingredients would be 2 teaspoons of cumin and a half a teaspoon of salt. Now, I don't use just any salt when it comes to canning. I will strictly use a canning salt. Some people have used Himalayan. I just tried to stick to the guidelines of what's best, so I use canning salt. Another ingredient is a half a cup of vinegar, 5% acidity. This is very important. We are going to be water bath canning this, so the acidity in this recipe is very important and needs to be to the exact. It needs to state on the bottle 5% acidity. And again, this was a half a cup. Another point it asked for is a 1/4 cup of lime juice. When you see in a canning recipe lime juice, lemon juice, preferably I use bottled. It is what's recommended because it has the right amount of acidic in these bottles compared to fresh. Fresh can vary, and you need the proper amount of acidic to be able to preserve on your shelf. I use the real lime 100% lime juice concentrate. This has worked well for me, and I know that it's safe. And now I've added all my ingredients together. I did forget to mention that it does require, or not, it's not required. I'm actually leaving this out on purpose, but you can add a half a teaspoon of red pepper, and that's basically the red pepper flakes. I have very young jalapenos in here and quite a bit with ribbing and seeds, and I don't want to overpower the strength of the spice. I do tend to like spicy, but not overwhelming spice. So I left it out, but you can add it if you want. The next step we're going to do is put this in a stock pot. I am going to bring this to a boil. I am going to set it from there after it boils down to a simmer and let this simmer for 10 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and prep my jars. A few factors I thought I'd bring up. I did put this in my stock pot, and now we're going to bring this up to a boil. As far as cookware, I never use anything less than stainless steel. I won't use aluminum because aluminum can tend to put metals within your food, and it can really mess up your canning. If you at all possible, and very suggestively, use stainless steel. As far as also eliminating spices, the key points in this one was the amount of vegetables that needed to be in this. When it comes to seasoning and spices, those are not important. It just comes down to flavoring. And like I said, I wish I had the cilantro. Unfortunately, I don't. This heat did not allow me to have it. So, and I thought I had something good, and it turned out bad. So I will add that when I use my dish. As far as the red pepper flakes, they're a spice or a seasoning. It's not mandatory. It just adds enhanced flavor. What is mandatory? Absolutely, is you follow the acidicness to this recipe, or you won't be canning it properly, and it will not sustain on your shelf. So when it comes to seasoning and spices, those are hit or miss if you want to. Most of the time I will, but when it comes to salsa, like I said, I just don't want overpowering. So I'm going to bring this up to a boil, and then we will simmer this for 10 minutes. Okay, so now we're at the point where I am prepping my jars. I'll give you some little safety hints as far as when it comes to canning. Number one, when you are using a hot recipe, you want your jars to be hot or warm, or at least not cold. They have to be sterilized. They have to be heated. Now, there are different ways that you've heard about sterilization, or you've probably researched and you've seen where some have put it getting in the oven at 200 to 225 degrees. Me personally, I wouldn't do that because it can tend to wear down your jars. Others have put it in hot water in their sink, and that's perfectly fine. But for me, preferably, I like to put mine in my rack, in my pot where it's heating up to keep my jars warm, and so that when I put my ingredients in, they will not explode. If you put something hot within a cold jar, physics will tell you they will explode, so we're avoiding that. Another thing about your jars, you want to check your rims. Make sure there are no chips. Make sure there are no cracks in your jar, because during your process, if there are, they will explode and you will lose everything you canned. So I have checked all my jars. I have made sure they were clean. I add some water to mine, and I will add it in my canner to be sterilized while my ingredients are cooking. Lids. Okay, there are several kinds of lids, and last year was a hit or miss. I grabbed what I could find. Golden Harvest at the Dollar General was one of them. Sometimes they had these at Walmart. They'll have the USA brands at Walmart. I forget the name of it. And then they'll have Ball. Many people ordered them online, and honestly, these are hit or miss if they're going to seal. I'm going to give it a good try. The ones with the Ball canning, they're called Sure-Tight. They claim that you don't have to heat these up, or you don't have to sterilize these, that you can just put them right on your jar. I have found even with those, sometimes they won't seal. So what I do is I will put them in a pot with some warm water, not boiling, but just warm enough to heat that seal around it. And once my jars are filled, I will add that, and to me it just gives it a little bit extra security once your rims are cleaned, and I will show you how to do all that too. The other equipment you're going to need is your magnet. This is to retrieve your lids like this out of your pot, and that way you don't have to put your hands in the hot water, and it sticks very well, as you can see. Another thing I use is this here tends to take the bubbles out of your food, which I'll explain that later. and also in the ends it gives you your depth, whether it's, some of your recipes will call for 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, which I rarely see that, to be honest with you. Occasionally I'll see a 1 inch, but most generally what I see is a 1/4 and a 1/2 inch. You will need your rings. This is very important. And in here, this is where you grab your jars so that you don't burn yourself in or out of the canner. And the canner that I am using a water bath canner. When my jars go into the water, it is very important to have 1 inch above your jar. You want them submerged in the water. You do not want any part of that unsubmerged for the healing or the sealing process. Another important factor is a lot of these canners will come with this rack you see in here. Sometimes you'll find a great deal at a yard sale or a thrift store, and hey, that's great. I would buy the canner if it doesn't have any holes or nothing. Another option you can do is you can go on Amazon or look around at the like Walmart or such if you happen, but most generally you'll find them on Amazon. Is you'll get this plate. If you don't have that rack, you can put this plate at the bottom of it. It's got the little steps on the bottom here. And why I am bringing this up is it's really important. You do not really want your jars sitting on the bottom of your pot. There is too much heat against that pot in your jars, and you will, I'll just perfectly tell you this, you will not have a canning session. You will have a pot full of mess because every jar will bust. That is just too much heat. They need that separation from the main heat source at the bottom. So that's important to have these plates or this rack in any canner, and that goes for the pressure canner. The pressure canner will use the rack that I had just showed you. Another handy tool, which to me is another important thing to have in my kitchen when it comes to canning, is a timer. There are a lot of recipes, and especially when it comes time to processing, whether it be in your canner or whether it be in the pressure canner, you have to have the exact amount of time that it requires to make your food safe. So this little handy dandy timer, I got at Walmart at the time. It was like 88 cents. I've had it for a year now, and it's worked really good. And if it ever goes out on me, it's worth going and getting $1.88 for another timer. Not sure if you can see this very well, but our salsa mix is now come to a boil, and I am going to lower this to a simmer and allow this to simmer for 10 minutes. I will tell you, with vinegar, not too many people will say anything. Don't get too close, because that will take your breath away when you're heating it up. So, and it smells amazing, y'all. But we're going to let this now simmer for 10 minutes. In the meantime, our jars are heating up and becoming sterile, and I am going to set my timer for 10 minutes, and then we will come back to fill our jars. A few other tools that are handy when it comes to canning is this funnel right here. This is a canning funnel that goes over the top of your jars like that while you're filling them. It helps keep the food cleaner in your area, and actually for the jars. Another one I like to use, this is actually a rubber based ladle. If you do use a metal based ladle, please make sure that it's stainless steel as well. It's just safer for you and for your food. I caught this one at a canning section at, Lord, I can't even remember the store we were at. It's like a feed store, so I found this cute little thing there. But yeah, these are also very handy to have. Well, our 10 minutes are up, and it's time to can. So I will show you how to do the next steps. I'm honestly not sure how many pints. This recipe will call for pints. Some of the recipes in the bulk preserving book, and I will show you at the end of this video which recipe book I am using for canning. Some of them will require quarts. This one did not, so it's strictly all pints, and the recipe said it would be 3 pints. We're going to see how many we actually get, because sometimes, like I stated before, this is hit or miss. Another thing that I will use is a clean paper towel for my rims, and I will dip this in vinegar and clean my rims with it. This goes for everything that I can, meats and whatever. If there's any grease on it, the vinegar helps cut the grease off. You want a good seal, so you want your rims nice and clean. So let's begin our canning process. With the gripper that I had showed you, I will pull each one jar at a time out of my canning rack. I actually dumped the water out. I don't want to put it back in my canner in case I have too much water. We don't need it to boil over, because we are going to bring this to a full rolling boil, and it will be covered. So I'm going to take the liquid out of it. Sometimes I will add just a little bit in it when I'm heating it, and then it ends up evaporating. So I will put just a little and the rest gets dumped. And believe me, these jars are hot. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. So I have my clean, sterile jar, and I will put my funnel on top. I will take my ingredients. Now the recipe says a 1/2 inch space. I will try to show you 2 ways. One, I will teach you with the measuring stick, but there is another way of seeing this, and this jar is hot, so I will show you this way. On these rims, you will see, I don't know if you can see this too well, but there's rings 1, 2, and 3 rings. This would equal out a 1/4 inch. This would be your 1/2 inch, and this is your 1 inch head space. That was just something I learned over the years of canning, but I am going to show you with the measuring adapter to show you exactly how to do this. Whew, that jar is hot. So back to filling our salsa. We're just going to fill these up, like I said, to the 1 inch headspace rim. And it's very important. Headspace is really important. You don't want no more, no less. It will affect the quality and the sealing of your products. You want exactly what it states. Now I will take my stick, the one that I had talked to you before with these little adapters at this end here. It calls about removing the bubbles. This is what it means by doing that. You will take your stick inside and just kind of bring it along in your mix, whatever you're using, and get these air bubbles out in case they formed any. And that's pretty much all you do. Then you're gonna take the other end. I will clean this end off, and you will look for your 1/2 inch space. This is your 1/4 inch, the first one. The second one is your 1/2 inch. You turn it around and you put it at the edge of your jar, and you want that tip, the liquid needs to come to the top of that tip. I don't exactly have enough, so I'm going to add a little more to this. Put this in here well. And I have my 1/2 inch. Like I said, you will know because that tip will hit the surface of the liquids, and you know you have it right. The next step, and this is very important as well, the cleaning of the rims. This is where I dip my paper towel or cloth, whatever you use, in my vinegar. You can use regular water if you want. Like I said, I'd like the vinegar because to me it tends to break up any other whatever particles got on your lid, and it will leave a clean rim for your lids. So you just gently take this around the rim, make sure it's good and clean, no debris whatsoever. Lordy, that's hot. And then you will get your lid, pop that on the top, And here, it calls for finger tight enclosure on your lids, or tightness. I'm going to show you the finger tight. You don't want to grip, and you don't want to turn and make it really tight. When you do that, you take serious injury to yourself or within your canner. It can create vapors or whatever. It can explode. The lids have been known to pop off inside your canner, and you will know when it does because you will hear it. I've never had that happen, thank you Lord, but that's not saying I won't. So finger tight. You want these fingers here. That's it. You don't want no grip. However point that your fingers will tighten this lid, that's all you need. And we will just take that on there. I'm going to hold this jar because it's hot. And I'm just going to do it with just these fingers until it's tight. And I'll take my gripper and we'll add it to our canner and on to the next one. See how many we're actually going to get. It looks like we may get 3 pints. That would be amazing if that happens. There have been times I've gotten way less than what it said, and there were times that I've gotten more. I don't fuss about either way. I'm just grateful for whatever I can get. And nope. 2 pints, guys, it looks like is all this is going to create for us. But I have more, so I can make me some more. This might get me another half pint, which I will probably use the leftovers in dinner tonight. So that's alright. I'll see how far it'll take me though, just in case. I've learned that looks can be deceiving. So again, we're going to take our air bubbles out of our jar. Measure, see how much we have. Spot on, 1/2 inch. Clean our rims. Nice and clean. Put our lid and seal it. Honestly, canning is not hard to do. It does take a lot of prep work, especially when your recipes, some of these can have a lot of ingredients. I found that in canning, your most time comes into prepping, not so much a canning process. Unless you're pressure canning, it can take a little over an hour for that. So, and sometimes in water bath canning, it could take you up to 30 minutes or more. And we're just going to see on this one here how much it's actually going to fill. I may just have, and I generally don't use this great big canner for small batches, but just to be able to show you, I could actually, when it comes to water bath canning, you can use a pot like the stainless steel stock pot, as long as you have something at the bottom, a plate or something at the bottom, like I showed you, so that air can get to it for one, and the water can come through it, that there's no gap between your heating surface and your jars. It needs that water no matter what you're doing. So you can use these. Some people have used washcloths, and it didn't work for me. I would find my washcloth floating at the top. So you can use what I have done, if anybody has an Instapot, you can use the Instapot center for that too. Now I'm just going to add this and see how much it gives us. And nope. So 2 pints it is, guys. Okay, like I said, I generally don't use this big of a pot for a small batch like this. It was a hit or miss for me on that. I will just use that this evening and use it towards my recipe. It's been cooked. If I'm going to use it right away, honestly, I don't need to worry about canning it up first. This process here is what we're canning and safely put on our shelf. So I'm going to immerse these in water and I will give you the next step. Okay, so now it's hard to see with all this smoke, and I'm so sorry. I have now immersed these in water. Again, you want to make sure that there is 1 inch space above the rims of your jars for proper sealing and carrying and basically cooking, because this is going to cook again. Next point is I am going to take my lid and I am going to top this. I am going to bring my heat on up because I want this now to come to a full rolling boil. Once this comes to a full rolling boil, I'll tell you what comes next. Okay, y'all, we finally reached our full boiling point. For me, I can usually tell when this point is. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's steam coming from my lid. That, after doing this for so long, it generally tells me that I'm at a full boil. And I will end up putting this back on here and leaving it just a few seconds more because I'm opening this. But you want, I don't know if you can see it, but that full boiling point. So I'm going to let this come back up to full boil again. And then I'm going to take my timer. And then according to this recipe, you want to set it for 15 minutes. So once I know that this is good, and it's still boiling really good, at this point I will set it for 15 minutes and wait until the timer goes off. Then I will show you the last steps to this process in this recipe. And we're going to set our timer now. Okay, I am pre-recording this for you today, and I decided to go ahead and post it today. What I am using while this is going, it's hot in here. Canning is hot in the summer. While this is processing for the 15 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and show you the canning book that I'm using. I don't know if you can see it, I'll do the best I can here. But it's the Blue Book Preserving Ball Canning Book. And earlier I showed you another one which has got some really good recipes. That one there I just showed you is like basic canning, tomato sauce, jellies, jams. This one here has a lot more recipes, all safe. You can find these cookbooks either on Amazon, at your bookstore, sometimes if you can, maybe in your own library. I follow these to a T. Now I will tell you, canning, you plan on spending half your day or sometimes your whole entire day. One of the reasons I like doing a full canner basically is because the more I have in there, the more it's worth it. Today I'm doing a tutorial to show you step by step, easier methods into canning, and this one happened to be with Salsa Verde. So it's okay, I only have 2 pints in here, but it was well worth it, and you're worth it to spend that time with you. I will say that pressure canning, at this point with water bath, this is your easiest method. You don't have to hover over the canner. Pretty much let it do its thing. Go do what you got to do. Just watch your timer. Don't let it go over or nothing like that. Just watch your timer, and definitely don't stop it beforehand. Pressure canner, on the other hand, you have to watch, because during the times and depending on how long you have to process, I've had stuff with 25 minutes up to an hour and a half. So it depends on what you have. Your gauges can fluctuate in pressure. You want to find your sweet spot, and only you can tell. There are many questions about, can I use a glass top stove? Most recommend don't. Others do. I don't have that problem. I have an electric stove, and a gas stove is great for this as well. But again, you have to find your spot where you can maintain that pressure without it dropping. If you drop it under 10 PSIs, you're going to have to start your process all over again. You don't want to go in too high, because that consists into danger zones with pressure you don't want to have. So you want to keep that flexibility from going up and down too much, because you'll actually ruin your seals in your jars as well. Other thing I can say is, even though like we went through step by step in the process of doing everything right, and you happen to have a jar that does not seal, there are two options you can do. One option is wait till your product that you're canning cools off and put it in the fridge, use it tonight or use it that night for your dinner, or within at least a day. The other option you can do is go through the canning process all over again. Can it tend to cook your food longer? Yeah, honestly, and I have done that at times where it frustrated me because the lid just would not seal. I would suggest, if you do it again, if you decide that you really want it on your pantry, take that lid off, put another one on, and then reseal it again and put it back in your canner. Another thing I won't do that some will do, I always use brand new lids. I will never reuse a lid. I don't, to me, find that safe. I don't trust it. So that's, again, totally up to you, but it's not my recommendation. I recommend using new lids always, whether you're having to recan or when you're canning your food of any type. I'm hoping that this tutorial is helping you, and after the last 15 minutes of this canning, I will show you the last steps of this, and I'm hoping you're enjoying this and this is helping you. My next videos may not be as long if I do a canning session. I just wanted to take this step by step with you. I will always give you the recipe and the directions, but the next rounds I probably won't do like bit by bit when I did the chopping in sections. It'll probably just be all at once and we'll go from there. This one is long because I wanted to show you step by step so that hopefully you'd understand better. It's easy to follow, and hopefully I accomplished that. Now we wait for our timer to go off. Okay, y'all, our temperature or our timer is about to go off. I wanted to stress the fact is, notice I did not change the temperature on the stove. You want to leave it alone. You don't want to turn it down low or nothing like that. Just leave it the way it is. You want that full rolling boil, and our timer just went off. So at this point, we turn our timer off. We will turn our stove off, and be careful on this part. Always take your lid and push it away from you. You want to remove your lid gently, not to burn yourself, and take this off, and then you want to set your timer again for 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to set our timer for 5 minutes, and after this point our salsa will be ready to take out. So once this is done, I will finalize this step for you. Okay, we reached our last and final step. Our timer is off, and now we're going to pull our jars out. You can try to pull this rack out of here. I'm not going to do that, actually. I'm just going to grab them from in here. I will say this, but first of all, look, ain't that beautiful? I will say I did try this, and it's spicy just the way it is. I'm glad I didn't add that pepper, red pepper flakes to this. And I'll explain in a minute. This towel that I'm putting this on, you really want to put this on a towel. This is a cotton cloth that I crocheted, or a regular towel or something on your counter. These are very hot jars, and if you put this on a cold surface, they're just going to explode. So make sure you have something that will hold the heat to these jars and keep them safe. And then we have our last jar here. Man, these are beautiful. I love that. And there is our green salsa verde. And there we have it, y'all. I've enjoyed being in the kitchen with you. I'm hoping that this step-by-step was very informative, easy to follow. And our next step on this point is just waiting for those lids to pop. It would be nice if it would do that while we're here so you can hear it. But you'll know when they've sealed. Don't touch them. Honestly, just leave them. I leave mine overnight. But the least amount of time for a your canned food to sit on the counter is at least 12 hours. And my husband just pulled in the driveway, so you're going to hear noise from our dog and everything else. Like I said, real time, y'all. And I just realized I forgot to take something out for dinner. So this is going to be interesting. Hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope that we have many more sessions together. Remember, if you like this video, subscribe, hit the like button, and share. Much love. God bless from Parton's Heritage Homestead.